Well, welcome once again as we're going through the book "What If Jesus Was Serious" by Skye Jethani, and we are now on chapter 27, and that's saying that if Jesus was serious, then our self-sacrifice should extend to our enemies. Now, I think probably the very first thing before we get right into this, we probably just maybe need to talk about the word enemies, because I think most of us might say we don't have any enemies. So maybe what's a good way to define this? That we talked about it a couple chapters ago, but I thought it'd
Yeah.
be really good if we kind of talked about it again.
Yeah, I think it is good to revisit this because if you don't think you have any enemies, you don't think this applies to you. And I think the best definition I've heard in today's culture was in a message by Andy Stanley talking about this, and he said, "Your enemy in today's culture is anyone where you would feel happy if something bad happened to them." So
I think that's really
basically,
good.
someone who might have hurt you, someone who might have, embarrassed you or embarrassed someone you love, or, is someone who's, kind of the guy who's a jerk at work kind of thing. And, if something bad happened to them, you might think, oh, you know what? They had that coming. And I think if we put that as our perspective of who we might consider an enemy, then this teaching hits right home with what we're talking about.
No, absolutely. All right, so we are just as in the Sermon on the Mount, we're on Matthew 5:38 to 41, and we'll just quickly read it here. You have heard the law that says the punishment must match the injury, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, do not resist an evil person. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer the other cheek also. If you are sued in a court and your shirt is taken from you, give your coat too. If a soldier demands that you carry his gear for a mile, carry it 2 miles.
Wow, this is difficult teaching even today. I've
Oh,
heard many
absolutely.
people quote the eye for an eye thing. Says it in the good book, eye for an eye. But again, Jesus kind of raises the bar with that. But I say, um, and I think our tendency is trying to maybe dilute that down a little bit to make it a little
Yeah.
easier for us to accommodate. But this is very difficult teaching.
Yeah, and I mean, I would relate to that. I think even in myself, and there are sometimes I'm thinking like, what's my way around this teaching, or just sort of outright, not remembering that Jesus had to turn the other cheek, or go the extra
Yeah.
mile. I think one of the things is that we understand, especially the extra mile thing. This would have been a big deal to the listeners because the Roman
Yeah.
army, within their law and structure, would have been again allowed to go to any one of the occupied people, so the Jewish people at that time, and say, "Carry my gear for a mile," and they had to. They were by law they could do this,
Drop
and
everything you have
so
and are doing
yeah,
and
carry
carry my
that
stuff.
gear for a mile. And so this would have surprised I would imagine a lot of these listeners, if not all of them, um, and it might have been directed at the zealots who would have preferred a far more violent response as opposed to
Yeah.
doing that. But I love it. Scott McKnight writes that Jesus is creating a system of grace, compassion, and love because he seeks to create a culture of generosity.
Generosity. Yeah.
The idea of being generous and sacrificing when it encompasses people we like,
It's easy.
or yeah, we feel some sort of compassion for, that's really easy. And here's basically being said, okay, but what about these people that we consider our enemies, or as we talked about, those that if something happened bad to them, we would say, oh, they got what they deserved, or we hope something might, like bad or it happened to someone who's wronged us, whatever that is, that we would actually be sacrificial and go the extra mile,
Because how often have we
specifically to
been,
those we
yeah, but
don't
how often
like.
have we actually not done that where someone comes to you who you don't like, maybe your boss at work or something like that, or someone who has some authority over you and asks you to do a specific task and you do the bare minimum just to say you did it,
Oh,
as
exactly.
opposed to going over and above what they ask you to do to demonstrate Jesus' point. And that's it's just it's not easy to comprehend that we might actually be required to do that as being part of Jesus' kingdom.
Well, and I think it really helps us understand exactly what when Jesus wants us to be generous, just how all encompassing it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we will be generous when we feel, I definitely know I feel this way lots of times. We will be
Yep.
generous when I feel like I need to be generous.
Yep.
But here's this very, like, even when you don't feel like it,
Yep.
that love needs to
Or
be our
lots of times
response.
generosity comes as a random act. Oh, it's Christmas time. I should give some money to whoever you normally give money to at Christmas time, and
Yep.
because it's Christmas time, and it makes me feel good to give $5, or it's just kind of random. Where Jesus is really talking about, again, more of a heart issue where we need to be generous all the time, even to people we don't like.
That's right. Well, and it does definitely knock the whole feeling side out of this. Just like, hey, you might need to be self-sacrificing to people that you don't feel like you want to be.
Yep.
You might be no feel in this. In fact, you'd be like, I really don't want to do this.
Yep.
I actually really like a Soren Kierkegaard quote. One, because I think it's true, and two, it's a little cheeky.
Yep.
And it says, "Men think that it's impossible for a human being to love his enemies, for enemies are hardly able to endure the sight of one another. Well, then, shut your eyes, and your enemy looks just like your neighbor." I like
it.
that. Like, it's true. It's cheeky. Yeah, I like it.
Yep.
Anyway, Peter would write this in his letter. And, Peter, who would have been at this actual, when Jesus was saying this, so it says to me that, well, maybe he took it seriously, because he basically would write this thing that kind of falls in line with this. It says, don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do, and he will grant you his blessing.
That's a powerful statement.
It really is.
Because everybody wants to be blessed, right? But sometimes we don't get a blessing because we refuse to give a blessing.
That's true. And it really is. Like, I mean, let's be honest. It really is, if someone insults us or retaliate, whatever that might be, our natural inclination isn't going to be to bless them. Like, it really is stepping outside of ourselves and hey, I'm going to do what Jesus said I should do in this case.
Yeah, that reminds me of a Martin Luther King quote. He said, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that."
That's right. And again, I love the doodle at the top of this chapter, and I think it encompasses a lot of what you see Martin Luther King Jr. say. And it's action, it's commitment, it's a decision, even if you don't
feel like it.
And then Paul would write this, Romans 12:20. If your enemies are hungry, feed them. They are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. And before we get to that last part, because that's a part we want to definitely like, burning coals of shame on their heads.
Yeah.
But like the idea, again, we have Peter sort of saying who was there, Paul, followed. These early followers of Jesus took this seriously. Like, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. Mm-hmm. They're thirsty. There's that response. And I think if we look at that idea that this will heap burning coals of shame on their heads, it's not about how we win or dominate. It's not about defeating or humiliating them. It's really about, hopefully, our good self-sacrifice, our good deeds in return. That is hopefully will be more about revealing the hearts of those people that we might call our enemies, revealing them to themselves. And maybe the good deeds will be something that Jesus will use to see what's going on in them, as well as not letting it consume us.
Yeah, that's important. And it's really, you need to really focus on that one part there, because that's what burning coals of shame actually means. That was a sign in Roman times that you were actually saying you're sorry. You would put a bowl of coals on your head and walk around to show that you had a changed heart. And so what the verse is saying then is, if you do good deeds towards your enemy, it may lead them to have a changed heart about themselves. And as you said, not letting it consume us in the meantime.
That's right.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today for chapter 23. Again, some great things to think about there. We've created some questions for you to further kind of have a discussion about this and get it down deep inside by, just discussing what we learned today. The link to the questions is in the show notes today. And if you're part of our church community, they're available on the course outline we have for you. And you can have a look at the questions yourself, think about some answers, and then discuss them in your missional community or with a trusted friend. And that just helps us really understand what Jesus was saying better. There's been so much in here, and even I've been a follower of Jesus for most of my life, and I've learned quite a few new things through this series. So I'm grateful for that. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you for the next chapter.